This is Sarah. I'm here to record a quick video for you guys on how to navigate within the ECS software product. So first of all, we're going to go to our ECS server where the ECS and Delta products are both installed. The first thing that you're going to notice is that there is a Delta icon on the desktop, but there are no other icons on the desktop by default. There's a couple different ways to get to the ECS setup utilities. ECS does have a web interface, commonly referred to as the web EDI or ECS UI. And we can talk about that as a separate topic, but most people choose to use the Windows utilities for accessing ECS and for performing setup and doing routine maintenance, as well as monitoring traffic within the ECS product. So I'm going to show you how to do that. ECS has a number of different Windows utilities, and they're used for various different purposes. You'll notice I haven't created any shortcuts to those utilities yet. And just to give you some background, when you install the ECS and Delta products, the only shortcut that's created by default is this Liaison Delta desktop shortcut. It's also referred to as Liaison Delta Studio component, where you can edit maps and so on, but there aren't any shortcuts created to the ECS utilities. So the first thing that we have to do after installing ECS in order to get to the setup utilities is to go into the path where we installed ECS2. This was what we selected during the install process. Typically by default, it is the C ECS folder on the ECS server. So we're going to go ahead and double click that ECS folder. Within the ECS folder, we're going to double click the bin directory. This is where some of our ECS utilities do reside, and we'll talk about some of the other utilities in a minute. But the two we're going to focus on in this ECS bin directory on the C drive by default are going to be the Data Administrator and then later on the ECS Management Console. The Data Administrator is probably where you're going to spend most of your day-to-day within ECS. I'm going to go ahead and right-click on this Data ADM application within the bin folder and pin it to my taskbar just so I can more easily get to it. But you could just double-click it from the folder to launch it. Either way, assuming that you've already launched and logged in with your ECS credentials, and again, if you get a credentials pop-up, like this one here, you simply need to enter your ECS username and your password. You either set those up when you installed ECS or someone set those up for you in the Trading Partner Management or TPM utility, which we'll go through in a moment. So once you enter your credentials here and hit OK, you're going to see the ECS Data Administrator utility. Now it is empty at this time on this server because we haven't been doing any testing on the server. This is a brand new ECS installation. But assuming that you are receiving inbound ECS traffic, that you're sending data outside of ECS to your trading partners, you would see rows of batches and then rows of deliveries in this lower pane of the ECS Data Administrator utility. Again, this is where you're going to spend the majority of your time in ECS because it's not a configuration utility. This is a utility for monitoring ECS throughput and seeing the traffic going into and out of ECS. I'm going to go ahead and close the Data Administrator utility, and let's take a look at our ECS Management Console utility. That's ECS MC here in the ECS bin directory. Again, I can create a shortcut to that on my taskbar here, and you can see the icon appears on the taskbar if I click that. And again, if it doesn't immediately launch the Management Console, it just means you may need to log in. So if you see this register server pop up, simply means that you need to log in with your credentials here. And again, those credentials are set up in Trading Partner Manager. We will go through Trading Partner Manager in a moment. The ECS Management Console is where you're going to set up your ECS configuration, the majority of it anyway. We'll talk about trading partners in a minute because those are set up in a separate utility. But here within the ECS Management Console, you're able to set up input channels. Those are basically channels that let you receive data into ECS, whether as an FTP or SFTP client, through an AS2 host that you set up here within ECS Management Console, through a file input channel that can look on the ECS or Windows file system for any network server connected to the ECS server, or on the local ECS server itself. and then a POP3 server or a built-in SMTP server. We don't see these two options used very much, but they do exist. And then the output channels are similar. This is just what lets us deliver data outside of ECS. This is, again, we got the file option to deliver data to a networked file system or to the local file directories on this Windows server that's hosting ECS, to an FTP or SFTP server, to an HTTP server commonly used for AS2 deliveries or web service deliveries, or to an SMTP output channel. This is more commonly used. This would be for like email alerts and so on. Event rules are basically what dictates how your data is processed when it arrives in ECS. You may receive files and then immediately forward them out to other locations. For example, receiving a file via FTP, forwarding it to your local file system. You would use an event rule to link that file or FTP input channel to the output channel where the data gets delivered. Similarly, you could use an event rule to translate the data when it arrives within ECS and so on. There's a couple of different ways to get to the remaining ECS utilities that we'll talk about. You can use these icons within the ECS Management Console toolbar. Here's the ECS Status Monitor, the Log Viewer, the Session Logs. That would be just your communication logs that are within the ECS Management Console, and the Trading Partner Manager utility. Let's focus in a little bit on the Trading Partner Manager utility. I could launch it right from here, but I want to also show you where that executable file resides on the ECS file system. So I'm going to go to the C Program Files x86 directory. This should be your default Delta install location. And so typically the utilities, the shared utilities between Delta and ECS are installed here under Program Files x86, Liaison, and Shared. And the bin directory is where you want to be. So here in the bin directory is a couple of utilities that we will look at. First of all, I'll just briefly run you through the Log Viewer utility. I'll go ahead and create that taskbar shortcut to Log Viewer, and we can open it up and take a quick look. We can go back and look at some additional days of data, but this basically just shows you the logging for ECS and all of the logs that are related to ECS communications or throughput. What I do want to focus on a little bit more is the Trading Partner Manager TPM utility. That's what allows us to set up new trading partners within ECS and also lets us set up ECS users. Those are two separate functions that we perform within the same utility. So I'm going to go ahead and create that shortcut on my taskbar here. And you can see the Trading Partner Manager shortcut's been created. Again, if I launch Trading Partner Manager and I see a select server dialog, instead of it launching the utility, it just means I need to enter my ECS credentials and hit OK, and then I can get in. You can see right now, all we have defined within our Trading Partner Manager utility is our one ECS user account. This was created by default when we installed ECS, but you have the option to create other user accounts as well as trading partners within the ECS Trading Partner Manager utility. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to create a new folder just for organizing records to make it a little easier. I'm going to go ahead and create a users folder so that we can keep our ECS user accounts separate from our EDI trading partners. And I'm going to move this administrator user account into my users folder so that it's organized neatly and it doesn't display in my root our trading partners directory here. Again, these are just suggested folders. You can change the names of these. You can delete these folders. You don't have to keep them. You have options as far as that goes. Just like I showed you, creating a new folder, editing a folder name, or deleting a folder is a similar process. You can just right click and use the shortcut menu to do those things. Let's talk about creating a brand new EDI trading partner. So we'll just create a dummy trading partner here. I'm going to call our trading partner Sofa So Good. We'll pretend we're a furniture sales company. And this gives us the option to set a status on that trading partner. There's a couple different statuses you'll probably use more than the others. Testing status just means you're in testing with that trading partner. Production would mean that you're immediately going to be in production with that partner. And the self status is a special status. That means that this trading partner record is representing your company or yourself within the trading partner manager and ECS products. We're going to pretend that we are Sofa So Good, this furniture company. So I'm going to set this to a self value. I'm going to hit next. And it's going to offer to copy settings from a template. We have no template set up, so I'm just going to hit next in this screen. We're just going through the Merlin screens, and I'll show you how to edit your entry in a moment. So I'm going to, this is where you would set up your EDI qualifiers and identifiers. You can see that you can ASC X12 or ANSI X12 is the default ID type that you would set up in here, but you could also set up other ID types, including Edifact and Tradecoms. There's also the option once we create the record to set up an AS2 identifier. So just remember that even though that's not available in the Merlin here, that will be available later on when we're editing this record. I'm going to go ahead and set my interchange qualifier to ZZ. And we'll pretend our interchange identifier is just SOFA or SOFA. And here is where it offers to let you define a output channel to deliver data to that trading partner. Since this is the self entry, or this is me, and I'm not typically going to deliver data to myself from ECS, I'm just going to leave this set to none for now because, again, this is the self entry. And I'm going to hit my finish button. And you can see it's there, it's created a new self record for me. I'm just going to look through that record and we can talk about some of the screens here that we didn't actually see fields for in the Merlin, but that we can edit now that we've created the record. So here, the account screen we don't typically use. So I'm going to skip over that. It's a little more used in in a user entry. The EDI tab is where we set up our qualifiers and, our delimiters. Including our sub-element delimiter here and our repeat separator character here if we have that. I think it's version 4030 and onward is where you would need to set a repeat character. Otherwise, that value is just set to U, I believe, for versions 4030 and earlier in ASC X12. Here is where you would set some values related to acknowledgements and whether you do send an acknowledgement. Typically, I just leave these set to their defaults. And typically I set the delimiters to whatever the trading partner has told us to set them to in their EDI specs. Security tab, this is used when you're setting up an AS2 trading partner. This is where you define your encryption cert for the partner and signing cert for the partner. Again, for the self-entry, you wouldn't need to set anything but an AS2 ID in the case that you are hosting an AS2 server through ECS, which is commonly done. In the delivery tab, again, this is where you would set up your delivery output channel used to deliver data to this partner. Since it's the self-entry, we're not going to set anything. The identification tab is where we can see and edit that ID that we set up in the initial create new partner Merlin. And if I wanted to set up a new alternate ID here, let's say we had a trading partner ID, or we had a telephone number ID rather, we would set that up here and click OK, and that would allow us a different ID. We could define that as maybe the test ID or the production ID simply by clicking these buttons at the top of the screen. And you can see that red and blue arrow indicates whether the ID is used for test or production data. If a blue arrow means that it's used for production, the red arrow means that it would be used for testing purposes. And again, that ties in with the status of this record. It's the self record, so it's considered a production record. But if it were set to test status, then that test ID would be applied when outgoing 997s and so on are generated. Going over to the Documents tab, this is where any Delta maps that should run on data from this trading partner would be installed and set up and identified within this Documents tab. The History tab just shows us who's been editing this record. This is useful if changes get made that somehow break something within ECS. You can hopefully trace back the changes and even identify who made them over here in this by column. So that's really useful. Contracts and addresses, these values can be set. They can even be referenced in Delta maps and so on, but they're typically really just used for for kind of reference purposes. They're not crucial for you to set up this data. We do typically expect that you'll set up this sort of data in your ERP application rather than directly within ECS. Same for the part numbers tab. The counters tab is where you set up the control numbers, if you need to start a control number at something other than a 1 value. Again, when we start exchanging EDI within ECS, you would start to see this control numbers tab for the self-entry build up with the control numbers for each trading partner that you deliver EDI data to. Those control numbers just get auto-incremented within the ECS product. And again, they can be viewed and incremented from this counters tab once we start exchanging EDI data. The watches tab is not typically used. Liaison/OpenText is deprecating the TPM watches functionality, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. If you have any questions about that, you can certainly let us know, but we're not going to focus on this because, again, this is functionality that some people use and find useful, but it is being deprecated. And the Notes tab is also more kind of a reference-only tab. We're not typically going to see that used for anything, but it's there if you need to put some notes in. Going to hit the OK button, and then we can set up a new EDI customer here in our customers folder. And we'll just say this is Office Max. We're not actually going to set up Office Max because I don't have their IDs and so on in front of me, but let's just pretend that we're setting up a production customer in here. So I can set them up with the testing status, and that's going to apply those test IDs that we configure for them. So let's say that the production ID is Office, ZZ is the qualifier, and then we'll just say that the test ID is ZZ Office T. I'm going to hit the next option there. Again, this is where we would set up our delivery output channel. This becomes more important when we are setting up a customer rather than a strictly a self-entry, where you're typically not delivering to yourself through ECS, but you will typically deliver EDI data to your trading partners. So let's set up something within the ECS management console that we can then use to show you how to set up the delivery properties within Trading Partner Manager. I'm going to set up just a simple file output channel for starters. Again, typically you wouldn't be delivering trading partner data to a file, although in a kind of a testing scenario, you just might. So we'll just go ahead and let's see, here's where I want to be. Let's just go to the C drive and we'll create a folder under ECS called test data. And that's under that folder. So the C ECS test data is where we want to deliver the data. I'm going to call this test folder, and that's my output channel. And actually, we want to create this as an output channel. So I'm going to cancel out of here. Let's make an output channel here and paste that path in. And we'll call this test folder. We can decide if we want to override if the file already exists. These typically aren't used as much, but I do like to lock the file exclusively while writing, so I will typically check that in every new output channel I create. I'm going to hit the OK option, and then we should be able to set that up now as our output channel here under Office Max. Here in this To field, you don't have the option as you do in your event rules to select substitution variables from a substitution variable builder. A shortcut to kind of look at those substitution variables is just to create like a dummy event rule and then click the substitution or expression builder option here in the To field of the event rule. And here you have access to all of your substitution variables within ECS. So one that I typically will use is unique batch identifier. That's guaranteed, again, to be unique per batch. And this handy little sample field here will show you what that built up file name is going to look like in production. So I'm just going to copy this from my substitution builder. Again, I don't want to build an event rule, but I do want to paste that into my new Office Max delivery properties. Here on the identification tab, you can see that test and production ID that we already set up. As we create Delta maps and install them in production, we would associate those maps with the Office Max record. Typically, we might have an 850 map here that would translate inbound data, as well as outbound maps that might work on map multiplexing principles and forward that outbound data to trading partners. Those are the primary utilities that you will use within ECS. Again, just to review, there's the Data Administrator utility that would show your inbound and outbound data that flows through the ECS server. The ECS Management Console is where you would configure your configuration items within ECS, both your input channels and your output channels, as well as event rules that dictate how that data is handled. We did create an output channel together to point to a test folder. And then in the Trading Partner Manager utility, we did associate that output channel with this Office Max trading partner customer so that outbound EDI data that's addressed to Office Max, including 997s that are created when we receive an Office Max 850 into ECS and we run a translate event rule against it, that 997 would by default send to this test folder output channel right here in TPM. This is where the EDI data is configured to deliver for this partner. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. We'd be happy to answer those and help you out.